So if you don't know what it is that you're looking for, what you need, and who you are as a person, then how can you find that in somebody else?
Yeah.
And this was huge for me in my transformation was if you're not vulnerable enough or have the courage enough to approach a woman or approach somebody that you're interested in,
Sure.
how can you have the courage to make the right choices within a relationship to lead that person towards Christ, but also in life? When life gets hard, how are you going to be able to handle that?
Hey everyone, welcome to TheWalk podcast. This is a place where we can answer honest questions, talk about hard issues, and walk alongside one another as we explore how spirituality fits into real life. I'm your host, Gil Shelby, and today we're talking to Mountain production director Alan Stengel about his journey with singleness. Alan, he's not just a pro with tech stuff behind the scenes, he's also a certified nutrition coach who's been on a really powerful fitness journey over the past few years. He often goes by Loud Alan because he's a ton of fun and he's your go-to guy for Jesus, fitness, and all things church and broadcast production. Alan is truly a gift to our community as he has modeled what it looks like to follow Jesus as a single guy, and we're just excited to learn more from him. A quick note on why we're talking about this. We want to be a community that has honest conversations about all of our walks of life. We're not just about married couples or families or people who are in relationships. No matter where you're at, we hope you find this conversation encouraging, life-giving, and authentic. Let's get started. I am sitting here with the one and only Alan Stengel.
Whoop, whoop.
What up? How you doing, man?
Gil Billy?
And you have a gigantic water bottle in front of me.
I do. You gotta stay hydrated, man.
Are you a gallon a day kind of guy?
I am. Do you drink water?
Do you drink water?
Do you drink water?
Do you drink water too? We're so similar.
Should that be my pickup line for now? Like, hey girl, do you drink water?
Hydration is important.
Yes,
honestly.
it is. Yeah.
Get a gallon a day. The topic today is singleness.
Yeah.
Are you ready for it?
I don't know. We'll see. Are you ready for it?
It's
That's
a hot
the question.
topic.
It is a hot topic.
Yeah, but there's a lot of people in many walks of life who either have been single at one point or walking through maybe a season or a stage of singleness. I don't know how you feel about it, but there's not a ton of maybe wisdom out there or the appropriate resources for how to just be a single person in 2023.
No, I think you're right. It's a unique time too. Before, when you would think about singleness, you would think about young people.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at the divorce numbers rising and people widowed, single isn't anymore just a specific demographic of ages. Now it's all over the place when you think about it like that. And so if there's ever a time now to have more wisdom on singleness, it's now. Yeah, I just think of people that have been married for like 15 years, going through a divorce, and then I don't even know how to date.
Yeah, and you're dropped in this whole new thing.
Now,
yeah.
And like, yeah. So, and then you still have the young people that are like, look, we don't even know what's going on.
We don't know either. Yeah, so, and being single in 2023 is different probably than it was
it's totally different.
15 years ago. Yeah. Just the internet has probably had an interesting effect on it and made it harder and easier in some weird ways.
But I don't know the numbers, but I'm willing to bet most people rely on online dating as their form of primary way of building connections or meeting somebody.
Yeah. Which is a whole new thing really in the last 6-7 years. So it's an interesting landscape to even try to have a conversation about singleness.
And then you throw in the whole Christian perspective. And like I've had a female friend of mine the other day was talking about dating. She's like, yeah, me and my boyfriend were talking the other night and we're like, you're such a catch. Like, aren't there people online? And I was like, well, you throw in that Christian aspect of it and it really changes even your landscape of dating.
Right. It's a smaller group of people trying to find wisdom. And church can be a weird place to figure that out, right? But grateful for you being here and kind of cracking this one open and
absolutely
talking more about it. A lot of people will recognize you and know you and probably know your voice or seen you on stage, especially people who have been around Mountain. And you do a lot of stuff behind the scenes and you're involved with a billion different things, fitness stuff, and you were doing jazzercise this morning.
I was.
I just exposed you.
You just exposed me.
We could edit that out. It was
spirit finger. I had my spirit fingers going. Man.
You do it all.
I was just missing a leotard and like It would have been everything. No, yeah.
So I think some people will recognize you. I think it might be helpful for folks. Why don't you share a little bit of your experience for someone who's in that season? What did it look like for Alan to walk through his 20s in singleness, not in singleness, all that stuff? What did your young adult years look like?
Yeah, so you mentioned something there about the fitness thing. I think that's kind of sets up a framework for understanding what singleness and dating in my 20s look like. Because part of my story is a weight loss transformation and deciding to take care of my body and take care of who I was, which led to, a big transformation with lots of weight, and my life drastically changed the way I live. And that happened in my early 30s. So just setting a framework for the 20s, I was a 300-pound guy who wasn't super active. And I went through a weight loss and went through transforming who I was physically and gained confidence in who I am. That's when I really started dating and putting myself out there. And so singleness in my 20s was a lot of insecurity. I just wasn't putting myself out there.
Yeah.
It was a lot of just sitting stagnant and not necessarily pursuing a relationship, but wishing that there would be a relationship, but never really having the courage to make a move or introduce myself to somebody. The landscape of dating was more personal interaction than it was online. Online was almost looked at as like a taboo thing. Like, oh no, don't wait.
Yeah, that's crazy to
you
think
met
about.
your wife online? What is wrong with you?
Yeah.
And now it's almost like, wait, you met somebody in person?
Yeah.
Like, that's amazing. How did you do it? I feel like the people online all crave to meet somebody in person, but online is like the way that's dominant right now.
Totally.
So yeah, in my 20s, I was a college student and kind of just watched all my friends dating and just kind of wished I had the confidence to put myself out there, the vulnerability to put myself out there, but it didn't. There's a little self-pity in there too, just frustration. And I was a Christian, pursued Christ, and was growing in my walk, but I never connected that to personal growth. It was always just my relationship with the Lord, but not necessarily how does it interact with who I am as a person, becoming the person that somebody that I'm looking for would want me to be.
Sure.
There's a lot of layers there that didn't really start unraveling until my 30s. Looking back, I wish that I had done that work back then. I think the landscape of dating would have looked a lot different for me. My friends will say now, Alan, could you imagine if the confidence and fitness that you have now, if you had that back then, what would have happened? And I don't know, man. Campus would have shut down, dude. Like the girls couldn't have handled it. Like
they wouldn't be able to handle it. Oh my gosh. Okay, so that's kind of like your college years.
Yeah.
You were in that, and you mentioned a journey of just kind of figuring out who you were and gaining your confidence and all of those sorts of things.
Yeah, I think that's huge. And well, one, to enter into a relationship, I think you need to be confident and know who you are as a person before you even start to entertain the idea of getting to know somebody else as a person. Because you got to know what you're worth. You need to know what you're looking for. I don't think that longing or desire to ever feel connectedness with somebody at an intimate level goes away. So if you don't know what it is that you're looking for, what you need, and who you are as a person, then how can you find that in somebody else?
Yeah.
And this was huge for me in my transformation was if you're not vulnerable enough or have the courage enough to approach a woman or approach somebody that you're interested in, how can you have the courage to make the right choices within a relationship to lead that person towards Christ, but also in life? When life gets hard, how are you going to be able to handle that? And so that's a hard pill to swallow, especially as a guy like, oh, I'm not man enough right now to talk to somebody. But at the same token, in life, you have to be man enough to handle those tough decisions and tough circumstances when they come up.
Yeah. There's a certain level of confidence it takes even in any relationship. It takes something from you to put yourself out there and like.
Yeah. I don't think girls realize how much that.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
They're like, just talk to her. I'm like, oh, yeah, it's that easy, right?
So on that, I mean, I feel like there's so much junk around the idea of singleness and dating and so many myths. Like you could turn to a billion different people and they would tell you a billion different things about this stage of life and maybe even thinking towards dating. What are some myths about relating to singleness that you've seen and you're like, that's probably not that helpful?
Yeah. Well, there's a couple. There's like a camp of people that look at singleness like a plague. Right? Like you should avoid singleness at all costs. In the era that I grew up in, it was, go to college, get your degree, get married, start a family. That's what the American dream is. And Although, yes, I still have those desires. I want to get married. I want to have kids, but that doesn't mean that I have to be miserable in my singleness. Part of figuring out who I was and finding myself was finding hobbies and things that I enjoy doing. So like mountain biking and snowboarding and hiking. There's lots of things that I've found that I'm like, oh, this is part of who I am. I like to be active, which has helped me figure out what I'm looking for in someone. Before in my 20s, when I was just kind of sitting around not doing anything, I wasn't growing. When you're single, you have the opportunity, you have the time, you have a little bit more resources, so you can spend time investing in yourself. You don't have to be miserable. This is huge. You can have strong desires and not have them met, but not be miserable. I think there's a freedom in saying like, hey, I'm uncontent right now, but I'm also joyful. I'm not happy where I'm at, but I'm also going to enjoy where I'm at.
Yeah.
I think I fall for it all the time. Like there are seasons where I catch myself and I'm like, oh, I'm awfully mopey about this season I'm in. Why don't you enjoy it? Enjoy the opportunities that you do have. So I think that's one myth.
Yeah. There is something about a stage of singleness where you have the opportunity maybe to like figure out parts of who you are that maybe you couldn't do in a relationship, especially in a dating relationship where you're trying to figure out another person and all that stuff. So
absolutely. Yeah.
That's good.
Well, and then the other person's, they're trying to figure you out. And if you don't know who you are, how are they going to figure who you are out?
Whoever you are is going to be the person that is in the relationship with the other person. Sounds really basic, but it is like, if you don't figure out who you are.
We lose sight of that. I was having lunch with a buddy the other day, and that was kind of what I had to remind him that the kind of person you're interested in, are they going to be interested in the kind of person you are? That can be a hard pill to swallow sometimes too, but that's like, well, then you need to start working on yourself to become the kind of person that the person you're interested in is interested in.
We're always thinking, why hasn't it happened yet? Or we have a list of maybe expectations for the other person, but not as much of who's the person I am and that the person I'm giving to another person. I think that's really, really good. All right, what else?
So this one, this another myth, and this one took me some time and deep vulnerability to work through, and that is that the desire for sex or intimacy is a sin or evil. I think in that Christian context, when we look at premarital sex, and I grew up in the purity culture.
Sure.
And there's a lot right now on what the effects of purity culture and all that. And I actually think purity culture was actually overall a good thing, but I do think there were some things that maybe going back could have been taught a little better. Yeah. For one, like I'm still a virgin, and that's, a direct result of purity culture, being raised that way. Situations I could have lost that, but I was raised in a upbringing where I was taught the importance of saving yourself for marriage and the covenant of sex in marriage. But one of the downfalls was what I heard growing up was like, flee the evil desires of your heart. And so I would feel these desires for intimacy and sex, and I would go, oh, that's an evil desire. I need to flee that.
Right.
When the reality is God put that desire in our hearts.
Yeah.
So if God put it there, how can it then be evil?
Right.
It's how we act upon it that is evil. Right. Yeah. And so being able to say like, yeah, I'm a 35-year-old virgin. Yeah, I want to have sex. Like, there are seasons I'm horny. So this just is what it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But in the Christian context, sometimes we're like, whoa, that's uncomfortable.
Right.
Like, don't say that. But like, no, that's the reality is. So I think there's no better place to be having those conversations than the church, where we can, restore it back to what God intended it to be. In our society today, especially where it's more about just the body connection and not the emotional and relational connection. Because ultimately that desire for sex is really a desire for intimacy, and intimacy. And this took me a while to work through. Sex is the physical act of intimacy, but intimacy is to be deeply known or to know deeply. And so ultimately what I really want is to be in a relationship with someone where they just know me and I know them. And I get home from a hard day at work or something. I know they know me. I don't have to work to try and feel connected or loved or known. I just know that I'm known. And there are other forms of relationships where you can have that aren't in a partner relationship. Yeah. Now that's probably the most deepest way to get there, in a partner, but there are other ways. And so, I think that just the myth, and that's like a messy myth,
totally.
Like
your
so many
sexual
layers
desires
to it.
and your desire for intimacy and connection or friendship. Like you said, it's in you. You're designed that way to feel that way, but those things can bleed together, and
you got to keep separating them and not letting one can take over the other sometimes. And so I just think that's why it's important for us to have conversations around that, so that, well, one, I remember feeling so isolated when I had this thought and worked through this. I felt like, is there something wrong with me for thinking this? Am I isolated in feeling this? Because it is something that we don't talk about a lot. And then the whole realization that, no, this is like God placed this desire on my heart. This is a holy desire, not an evil desire. And because of that, I should honor it with more reverence than if it was just an evil desire.
Yeah. And like you said, even in church, we get weird about it. We don't always know how to point people or direct them as to what to do with that desire.
I don't want to know what you're thinking. Like, no. Ooh.
Well, it's either
we're like, dude, you looked at pornography? Like, whoa, bro. Like, we had a missionary here once that said this, and it was eye-opening for me. He's like, we often will put shame on the person and not shame on the sin or shame on Satan. It should be shame on you, Satan, not shame on you. Like when someone commits a sin or, screws up, instead of casting shame on them, the shame should go on on Satan. Shame on you, Satan, for attacking our brother and sister in Christ, not shame on you for being weak, or having a moment of vulnerability, or
people get weird when we talk about sin too, because sin is both a thing that we do and a part of who we are often, but the Bible talks about it this way. It's like sin has this agency. It invades your life. It's this power that works over you. And a lot of sin comes from a place that's actually outside of you. There are powers working on you to work in a certain way. So
singles too. I mean, I think everyone's exposed. I feel in singleness though, sometimes there's not as many people around you that will help you see where you might be slipping or sliding towards where the outside powers could be working against you. There's less people around you to be able to point that out to you, because sometimes you need a community around you that will be like, hey, I noticed this in you, and is something happening here?
And then you have friends who maybe they're living in a different way. Their philosophy is, okay, you have those desires, just act on them, like do whatever you want and act on them. And then you have another side, maybe like the more traditional understanding of how things used to be in churches especially, is like, if you have a desire, like you said, get rid of it, repress it, don't even think about it. And so you're kind of caught in the middle of both of those are really unhelpful. So.
Yes. Which, some of my online dating troubles have been some of that. Finding someone, talking to someone, and they're like, I am so traditional in these things and looking for Jesus himself incarnated in flesh. You know what I mean? Like, you don't make any mistakes.
Casual
or standard. I'm a Christian, but living like the world. And you don't want to be lukewarm, but where's that middle ground on those beliefs? It is a gift from God, but like, this is how we're going to operate in that.
Yeah. The wisdom to know what to do with those desires. Yeah. That's something that, whether you're single, married, wherever you're at, that's stuff of life, is learning how to do that.
And when you don't communicate it, I think that's when you're setting yourself up for Satan to have more power. Like, sin festers and grows in the dark. And so when you're not communicating or talking, that's when it continues to grow and grow and grow. So when you have these conversations with people and you have a crew around you, you can bring that to light, because technically you're still considered single if you're dating somebody. Like, if you're dating someone, you should be having those conversations, because that's going to bring that to light. And so, in my last relationship, we would talk about, hey, I'm feeling some strong, intimate feelings right now. We should probably set up some boundaries so that we know that we're not going to create an environment where we're going to let Satan come in and work against us. Let's communicate clearly. I have strong feelings, or I have strong desires right now that I probably can't control. So we shouldn't be alone right now. And that's not a bad thing. It's just and actually it was a really good thing. I mean, there's a good thing to hear your partner, the person you're dating, say that about you. You're like, okay, you're attracted to me. Like, this is good. Let's continue to pursue righteousness and communicate clearly about these things.
Something about, just saying it out loud with the other person, or having people in your life who you can literally just say and be totally honest and real, not trying to be anybody else, but just say, here's what happened to me today. Here's what I'm dealing with. There's something about just saying it out loud. I think that's always where healing happens. Or
like,
right?
Bro, I just need a hug. Like,
yeah.
Normalize bro hugs.
Yeah, that's right. Normalize bro hugs. Yeah. Okay. What's a phrase that you don't want to hear anymore?
I will say, this may be not true for everybody. If you interviewed all the single people, I would say at least for me, but a lot, in my observation would be a lot of people aren't choosing singleness on purpose. Right. Or if they are, it's for a short season of time for a specific reason, to heal from something or to work on themselves. So when you look at singleness, there's an end goal, right? And that's to be connected with somebody. One of the unhelpful advices I feel like I've heard a lot in church sermons before is just keep running towards Jesus. And occasionally look to your left and your right and see who's running at the same pace towards Jesus with you. And then ask him out to coffee. And then that's who you should be with. And I'm like, that is actually a good concept, right? Like, okay, Alan, you're single and you want to be with someone. What are the things you like to do? You like to mountain bike and snowboard. Go mountain bike and snowboard and see who else is out there doing that stuff around you. And then go to church. You know what I mean? Like, go get yourself out in the community, do the activities that you like to do, meet people, and see who's doing those values line up with your values. But that doesn't solve the problem of how to ask a female out, how to handle rejection. It is much more complicated to face your fears and courage. The fear of rejection is crippling, especially for a lot of men. And I don't know if everyone would acknowledge that, but I feel like it is like the courage to take steps there. And so I feel like a more practical approach of like, here are some practical things to do, or here is why you're feeling the way you feel from a more of a neurological standpoint, from a scientific standpoint. Mm-hmm. I know for me, this might sound creepy, I struggled with anxiety around asking a girl out. Yeah. I was listening to a dating podcast on Instagram, and they used this word called approach anxiety, which I was like, whoa, that's like a thing? Yeah. Oh, it's approaching. That's what it is. I'm having approach anxiety. Uh-huh. Anytime someone says, go approach that girl, it's like a wave of anxiety that comes on me. Mm-hmm. When I was able to name it's actually a thing that I'm struggling with, then I can start working through that and how to like get better at that. And so one of the things is don't think, just go. Don't think, just walk. When you start overthinking it, you're going to stay crippled. So at the grocery store, if you see a cute girl down an aisle, just walk down that aisle and like pick something off the shelf down there. No intention to talk, but what you're doing is you're training your body. Then like, I see someone cute, I'm going to start walking towards them. Then you do that a while. And then the next thing is maybe ask them a question about like, oh, have you ever tried that cereal before? Now you're getting practice walking and asking them a question. No intent for anything other, but you're getting more and more comfortable. Yeah. Or you're checking out at the grocery store and there's a cute girl behind the counter and you're just like, oh, hey, how's your day? Like you start to train your body how to interact with the opposite sex. And then you start to feel those feelings of the approach anxiety coming up, but you're also working through them. And so the next time you're in a situation like that, you're growing. We don't often look at it from a science like that, but everything else in life we would, right? Any other habit, we would look at it like a habit. Right. But for some reason we've like said, no, that's not a thing. You're either an alpha man and you can do this or you're not.
Gosh, yeah. There's so much pressure around a moment like that too, because it can feel like an all or nothing sort of thing. And if that person's rejecting you, then
we internalize it.
You. Right, yeah. And you have to deal with that. You have to walk away.
Right. I don't know why we feel so bad after rejection, but it's like, oh my gosh, they hate me. Yeah. I'm nothing. But you're like, no, dude, they just didn't want to. Like, it's all good. Like, you'll be fine. I also think once you've had to reject somebody, it makes getting rejected easier. Do you know what I mean? Because you're like, oh, this feels terrible having to reject somebody. So now, I don't know. It just feels easier to get rejected when you've been the person rejecting someone before.
Sure. Yeah, that's good. That's helpful. Removes a little bit of the easily built up pressure and hype around a moment of connection and talking with someone. So I think that's really helpful.
Some of that could be even related to how you disciple people, right? Mm-hmm. There's those people we know that can walk up to anyone and just start a conversation about Jesus. Yep. And next thing you know, he's praying for them. And I just struggle at approaching people and having meaningful conversations. I can have a surface level conversation with anybody any day, but trying to take things to the next level. And I would say that correlates, right? You're learning who you are as a person and how you operate.
Yeah. Comfort zone stuff. Yeah. Stepping out.
You got to step out of it, but it's hard. And I think that's some of the other advice is like, oh, just step out of your comfort zone. Well, yeah, that's good advice, but like give them some tangible steps and put yourself in their shoes and don't make it just sound like it's some easy thing. Like really put yourself in their shoes and give them some actionable steps or point them to someone that you might know that does. I don't want like a huge chunk of men just going out awkwardly approaching women at the grocery store because I just said that.
Yeah, the point was not,
It was not that. The point was to recognize what your roadblocks are and what keeps you back and start working through that and towards that.
Right. It's not a fix all of here's how
Right.
you're going to find the person you're going to spend
Yeah.
the rest of your life with. But that grows you as a person,
Right.
living out and connecting with others and all that stuff.
I think that was one good thing with online dating is there's no ambiguity.
Mm.
Ambiguity can breed anxiety. And for me, that was one of the things too. If I'm building a friendship with someone and I'm interested, but now it's unclear because we've kind of flirted a little bit, but neither one of us has really made a move. And there's this ambiguity between what we are as friends or not, which you could call the friend zone. That ambiguity is what causes anxiety. So if you can just be clear and upfront right away, then there's so much less anxiety. And
it removes all of the pent up expectations or pressure and all that stuff. Yep, that's good. I heard someone say recently, they were like, if it's mentionable, it's manageable. Like it can be done and healed and worked up. And I think that's really
so
good.
I think online dating has helped in one regards because there's no ambiguity there, right? Clearly, we're both interested in dating. So the whole question on like, what are we doing is not even in the picture because we met on a dating platform.
Yeah, that's good. Outside of the bad advice and maybe the unhelpful things, what are some helpful guidance that you've maybe gotten or teachings or experiences, or even like if you want to bring the Bible into this, you certainly can too. Just stuff that's been helpful for you.
Something somebody said to me, but it's something I noticed in myself and I started doing just this last year. There's the 5 love languages, right? And as singles, you find ways that you can, whatever your love language is, I encourage you to find ways to get those needs met from friends or from like whatever, like find ways to get those needs met. Because if you're living in singleness, your love languages, it doesn't mean that your love languages don't exist. It just means that there's not someone there to help give those to you or notice that or intentionally invest in you in that way. So you have to work to find friends and people to intentionally invest in you in that way. And so one of mine, which I've learned recently, quality time and words of affirmation were mine. After my last relationship, I learned that it's really physical touch and words of affirmation that are mine. And I noticed this when I felt longings for just some hugs. I just want to be connected to someone. And for men, we're not like, oh, come here, let me hug you. Like, come here. The girls will just cuddle up with each other on the couch like it's nothing. But I'm not going to be like, hey, Gil, let's watch a movie and cuddle. You know what I mean? So then where do single men go to get like good, holy physical touch that's honoring to God, but also just fills that bucket. And then a longing for kids. And I want to have kids and have a family one day. And I just hit me one day. I was like, you know what, Alan, every Sunday you're surrounded by dozens of kids that like love and know you and their parents you work with or you're friends with. Like there's an opportunity for you to invest in these kids. And so that's where I really kind of leaned into. I'm going to be the fun uncle for all these kids on Sundays. So it's not uncommon to walk in the lobby and see me wrestling a couple of the little guys. And that fills my bucket. There's no purer joy than like just like a kid coming up and like hugging you. And so like I get to like invest in kids, and like a church can sometimes be a place they don't want to be. I think Mountain's awesome and kids love being here. Our kids team does a great job. But I just have a blast like investing in the kids, and I work backstage on the production team. And so like, it's awesome that some of the team members just bring their kids backstage before service start because they have to. And it's fun making them feel like part of the team and giving them fist bumps. And find ways that you can, the things that you feel like you're deficient in your life right now that would bring you joy, you need to find ways that you can get that or receive that.
All of those, those desires and needs, and even like the love language. What are the love languages? They're physical touch,
words of affirmation, quality time, acts of service, and gifts.
So all things that at a base level, like humans need, and things that also you have a need to give to others. Like I think a lot of times it's like, I need to be loved, but it's also, you also have a deep need to give love to other people in that way. And so those are 5 things. They're not exhaustive, but it's like, those are probably 1 or 2 of those you're oriented towards.
Absolutely.
So finding other avenues to figure that out.
Tell someone in their 20s to absolutely, get that book and read it or figure out what that is.
The love language.
I feel like when I was in my 20s, I was like, I'm not doing, like, self-work wasn't really a thing for me.
Sure.
And I don't know maybe that was a cultural thing to my, when I was in my 20s, but like, it wasn't about, it was like, that's who I am. It's not self-work. I don't need to like invest in myself, but like finding out your love languages, the Enneagram, things like that have all helped develop me emotionally now to where I'm at.
What else has been helpful for you? And maybe as you walk in especially in a Christian community. You mentioned you have a lot of people with families and stuff. You're able to connect with
Yeah.
people in that way. What else has been helpful?
So the families thing, it can be a little awkward sometimes because when you get invited over, are you just inviting your single friend over out of pity or like,
Sure. Yeah.
oh, Alan, I remember one Sunday I posted on Instagram. I was like just being vulnerable. And Instagram sometimes is a place where I can just be vulnerable. And it's not like to get pity, but it's more like there's people probably feeling similarly to me. And I have a little bit of a platform with my role here. So if I can be vulnerable on a platform and let other people see, like, oh, somebody else feels the same way I do, I think we have to be careful to make sure our motives don't fade over into the other one.
Yeah.
But like I posted about how Sundays can be rough sometimes. I'm surrounded by all these families and I long to have a family one day. And then I go home to my apartment and it's just me. You go from being around all of this to just by yourself. That loneliness can really kick in. And then the next week I had 3 people invite me over to their house that Sunday, and which is awesome.
You were bombarded.
Yeah. So you're just like, but was that pity or was that because you really wanted me? And you just have to get over that personally. Like none of those people did that out of pity. Like they care about me as a person. If your married couples are inviting you to hang out with them, go hang out with them. It's a gift for you to be in their life and remind them what single life looks like. And it's also a gift for you to watch them and learn what does, married and couple life look like for them. And you can learn from that. I have some couples in my mind that certain things that they all do that I hope to carry that over into my relationships.
Dude, that's huge. I think about that all the time too, because no matter what community you're a part of, like we get really siloed off into like married couples do their own thing and then single people have their own community. And it's just like those people getting together. And actually, like you said, there is so much that a married couple or a young family has to learn from a single person who's walking and figuring out all the stuff that you're learning and even talked about today and vice versa. I think it's important.
And you have to fight hard for that. Like you intentionally work to make that happen.
Yeah.
And I would probably say sometimes even the single people have to be a little bit more intentional in trying to create those environments. Because this is fair for married couples, like, yeah, they have kids and a family and lots of things going on that they're thinking through. The last thing sometimes they're thinking is like, let's invite some of our single friends over.
Rhythm of life is so different.
Yeah. So it's okay to reach out and see if they want to hang out. It's okay to insert yourself in their lives. If they don't want you there, they'll let you know.
Oh, that's good. Talk about what it means to be content. I think you've already dispelled the myth of the desire that you have to be in a relationship is not bad. It is good. It is God-given. Right. But sometimes there's also this wave of people who say like, maybe you just need to be content where you are. How do you balance the tension of contentment with your life as well as the things you're longing for?
Right. How do you content with your uncontentment? You know what I mean? But how do you make yourself be content with where you're at?
Right.
Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah.
That's not easy. Sometimes it's great. Like I'm super content. And then there's times where it's like, man, I'm not content right now. I think just the permission to be real and honest with yourself and be okay not being okay. That's huge. What I've found is I'm forcing myself to be more vulnerable with the people that I work with, the people that I'm in my life, to let them know when I'm not okay. Because I tend to push emotional pain down. Sure. I don't want to deal with emotional pain, but I know if I don't, then I'm never going to grow from it. You have to acknowledge the thing that you're not content with to be able to become content with where you're at.
Yeah.
And like, that's when it hits me most. Like I'm sitting at home at my apartment by myself and loneliness kicks in and there's a deep longing there for something more. Like I can let that take me down a dark hole of just self-pity and frustration and anger. Or I can say, no, I long for this one day. It's not happening right now. What are things that bring me joy? That I can go do those things in this season right now to help bring me some contentment. And one thing I've done is, and not necessarily just for singleness, but in like lots of areas. I remember I was at a funeral like a couple weeks ago, and it was the first funeral I'd been to since my mom passed away. And it like hit me a little differently. And so I just pulled out my phone and I texted 3 close friends individually and just said, hey, this is what's happening. This is what I'm feeling. I just need to let somebody know. You don't need to do anything. I just need to let somebody know. Thanks. And they all just replied, praying for you. Thanks for letting me know. Like
And that was
sometimes,
it.
yeah, I don't need a conversation about it. Like I just need you to know I'm feeling this way.
Yeah.
Thanks for like knowing that you're with me. We're good. And I think that can be true too. Like, hey, I'm feeling lonely tonight. I'm okay. I just need somebody else to know that. And like that helps so much. You're just like, oh, I'm not shouldering this alone. Like there's people in my life. So like letting people know like, hey, I'm just feeling a little vulnerable and a little meh right now. But it's okay. Like I'm content, but I'm also not like amazing. You know what I mean? Like I think it's okay to live in that gray area.
I love what you just said, because you had in that moment, and I get it there sometimes too, you had a moment of, you're not necessarily in a room with the other people that you love and trust, so you can say that too, but
right.
You had a moment of feeling known and loved and seen and connected with, just because you really pretty casually said, hey, here's what I'm feeling. Like, yeah, it didn't have to be a whole vent session. And it can be that you have, I'm sure those friends would sit with you and talk through that stuff over a fire or whatever it is.
Oh yeah,
but
that's a whole nother podcast.
Around the fire.
Jenny Allen has a book, Find Your People. She has a couple questions in there. It's all about like taking conversation deeper with your friends and community. And maybe that's something that you could do like from this podcast. You go, oh, this is a step that I can do to experience some more connectedness with people. Because often we'll sit around people at a bonfire, leave, but don't know anything more deeply about who they are as people, or we don't feel any more deeply connected. And if we go back to that longing of connectedness, it's really that longing of intimacy and like knowing someone deeply. And so she proposes a couple questions. One is like, what is something in your life that's bringing you joy right now? And then what is something that's making you anxious? So my friends they laugh at me because like we'll go out to like a brewery or a distillery somewhere, and like I wait till like 2 drinks have been had, and then I ask the question. I'm like, all right, so because I just know like some of my buddies are more willing to open up once they've had a bourbon after they've had a bourbon. And like my one buddy, his wife is like, yes, Alan's asking the question. I can hear how my husband's feeling. Like. No, but like for singles, like that's a good way to be more connected, right? Like be intentional with the questions you ask. So I've started doing that when I'm out with a group of friends, and I'll wait till we'll have some fun, like the night's going well, and then I'll ask, hey, all right, let's just go around. What is something that's bringing you joy? Something that's making you. You'd be surprised. Like you'll get the people that are like, I don't want to answer, or like they'll give you goofy answers, but you'll have a couple that will just like open up, and you'll like, oh, I didn't know like that was going on in your life, and then you feel more drawn and connected to somebody there.
Yeah.
And so.
Yeah, dude, especially the question of, what's bringing you anxiety? I think everyone has an answer to that question. That's an immediate on-ramp to conversation and connection. Yeah, like what's something you're avoiding in the next couple months or something like that.
Right.
That will do it. So yeah, I think part of it is invest in friendships in that way. That's maybe different from a dating relationship, but yeah, that's great. Looking back where you are now, what are the things that you learned about God? Like where did God fit into that journey? How did that affect your relationship with God?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, and that's a thing that I think that's often overlooked in like singleness and dating. I think I mentioned too, like if you don't have the courage to like approach a girl and ask her out, how are you gonna have the like courage to handle tough things when they come up in life? And I think that's just, that's kind of similar to like our faith, right? If I can't lead myself spiritually and pursue Christ, how can I lead a significant other? How can I lead a household to Christ, to the throne room? And so, yeah, I remember going on some first dates like during COVID, and I'm like, oh wow, I am not a good enough Christian for her. Like, like dang, like I remember leaving convicted. Like, wow, I need to step my game up, which is not a bad thing. And there's something in that for me, like the thought of leading a potential spouse one day. It draws me in and makes me want to be a better man of God. And yeah, I talked a little bit about vulnerability too. I think being vulnerable with God too is a huge, that's a season I'm in right now. I remember I was at a conference recently and I did not want to go. I was just kind of frustrated. I was just frustrated with God and where I am and not being content. I was not content with being single. I was in a season where I'm just not happy with my finances, not happy with my physical journey, not happy with my, where I am, my relationship with the Lord. And so the last place I wanted to be was at a Christian conference with a bunch of worship pastors who are just going to be singing praises to Jesus, when I don't want to like sing these praises to Jesus if I don't really mean them?
Yeah.
And I didn't. Like, and the second night it was like a stripped down acoustic worship night, and I was trying to sing the words, but I couldn't get myself to sing the words because just was in this season where I was like, I'm frustrated at you, God. Like, why do I want to praise you? And then the one lyric from, I forget the name of the song, but it was, show me who you are and fill me. And that was the lyric. And I started singing that. I was like, show me who you are and fill me. I'm not on the band. I'm the production guy. That's why you could tell from my voice right there. So, but I could sing that because I was like, God, I want you to show me who you are. And I have that longing. I can't praise you right now because I'm mad at you, but I still want you to show me who you are. And I still want you to fill me. And I remember that, like, as I sang that, it got easier and easier for me to praise his name. And then another song came on by Kane, and the one lyric is, Jesus, you can have it all because you love every broken piece of an honest offering. And I was like, man, I can be frustrated with God and have a relationship with him and praise him. It wrecked me because I was like, I've been living frustrated and avoiding you instead of saying, God, I'm frustrated, but I'm pursuing you and I'm including you in this journey. And that over time has helped shape like my relationship with the Lord. Is like, it's the relationship of one I can go to him when I'm happy and I can go to him when I'm sad. And I think that's just also encouraging to know, like, man, you could not be happy with where you are in your dating life. You could not be happy with where you are in your finances. You could not be happy with where you are in your singleness. But God wants to hear that. Like, he wants to hear you have those conversations with him.
He doesn't want you to figure all that stuff out before he connects with you.
Now, you do have a part to play in this. Yeah. Right? You being miserable in singleness isn't just a God thing. It's a you thing too. But God wants to be a part of that. And so he wants to hear you and wants to lead you to joy. But if you're not connected to him, then you're never going to find the things that actually bring you real authentic happiness. Because if you go mountain bike and it brings you joy out there, but then you go home and you're sad and miserable and not content, it's because maybe God's not connected into that. And so for me, when I go mountain biking, I see nature, I see God, and I'm able to worship God in a tangible way. When I feel the sun and the breeze, it lets me know that my God is a creator and someone that created me and also created the trees and the wind and like created the nature that I'm out in. And so that's one way that I can connect with him and worship him. And so, yeah, I think that's how God's kind of connected and intertwined with me. The things I like to do, I also see God in doing those things. And the part that we have to play is we have to figure out the things we like to do, but also figure out how God plays a part in that and pursue him in those things.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, maybe just briefly, we talked about there's a lot of unhelpful stuff and advice and maybe stuff that you've heard in the world. If you just had maybe a word of comfort or encouragement for someone maybe who's single right now and is maybe feeling all of those things, if you could say like one thing to someone who's in that season right now just to encourage them, what would you say?
I would say if you're in a season of frustration, God hears you. He's with you. He has a plan for your future. As frustrating as it can be to not see that plan because you're not ready, or but you feel like you're ready. Maybe God's saying you're not, and we can't always see why. But I would say stay diligent in him and continue to pursue Christ. Invite him into your daily activities because he loves you. He created you. But I'd also ask you to do some inward looking. Like, are you becoming the person of God that God wants you to become? And that can be a hard pill to swallow sometimes, but just know as you are honest with God and work through that you will find peace and contentment. And then you just never know what God might lead you to, but just trust and know that he has a plan for you. If you're in a season of loving and enjoying your singleness, what areas of your life maybe are you excluding God from? Like, are you loving all these areas, but is God a part of that? And are you becoming the person that God wants you to become? Living a life that would honor him holistically. And that's the crazy thing about God, right? He loves us no matter where we are or what we've done on the journey. And so just continue to pursue him and invite him into all the different areas of your life and just see how he works. You might not see radical change right away. Like, pursuing God isn't a promise that you're going to find somebody. Like, we don't know God's plans for us, but he did create us, and we're called to worship him and include him into all things. And so as we do that, I feel like we're open more to the Spirit, but we're open more to how, like, where God might be directing us. And so it's twofold, right? We have to invite God in, but then we also have to take steps to where God's leading us. And so I would say stay strong, keep taking steps, but invite God in to show you where he's leading you. And yeah.
Anything else? Any other resources or tips that you would point people to, say, hey, check this out? I mean, Jenny Allen's awesome. That's a great book. I would drop that in the show notes too. To say, like,
that Passion City. Who's the Passion City pastor in DC?
Ben Stewart. Ben
Stewart has it's a dated series, but their church did a whole series on that, and he got pretty practical on, and I, like, a lot of stuff I said, I talked, like, how do you know they're the one? How do you approach a woman? I think he talks about women. How do you reject a man? Like,
sure, yeah.
You know what I mean? In a biblical way. The whole ambiguity thing there, he talks a lot about anxiousness and ambiguity. And so I would highly recommend that series. It's really good. And then, this podcast.
This podcast, Find Alan in person. We'll continue the conversation with all of us. Dude, thanks for coming on and being willing to share a little bit.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's good. Learned a lot. I think it'll be, great for all of us. We're all kind of figuring out. I love this conversation because it's not just a singleness conversation. It's like a human connection conversation. That all of this stuff, like, I'm learning, you're learning, all of us are walking through it and figuring out what can we do with the desire for connection that God has put in every single one of us. That's what I loved about that was a thread through this whole conversation, is all of that's from God. How do we steward it and cultivate it into what it's meant to be in the world, which is a really, really special thing. So thanks for leading us through that, Alan.
Yeah, bro.
I'm so glad that we were able to get Alan on the podcast, especially for this topic. He brings an energy and authenticity to every conversation, and I loved his words about what it looks like to be honest about the experience of singleness, while also thinking about what it means to practice contentment. Alan is a really great example of the kind of thing this podcast is all about. Honesty, authenticity, and real wisdom from trusted voices. This podcast is a resource of Mountain Christian Church in Maryland. Our door is always open as you explore all of this, so feel free to reach out anytime through the email in the show notes. To find links to resources you heard about today, check out the show notes as well. If you found this conversation helpful, go ahead and share it with a friend. Thank you guys for being here, and until next time, take care and know that we are walking alongside you.